Hello, Zest here. Calculated Compression Collapse, The Crushing of Common Citizens, Part 3, The Promotion of Consumerism and the Debt Trap. Another major tool in the elite counteroffensive was consumerism. Here's where the plot thickens, and the elite's flair truly shines. Once the myth of the American dream was established, the elite-controlled media relentlessly promoted consumerism as the primary expression of success and citizenship. Americans were sold a new definition of well-being, no longer based on job security or social cohesion, but on consumption. The standard of living was redefined not by financial security, savings, or quality of life, but by the acquisition of goods, the number of gadgets one could buy. A new consumerist paradise was sold to the American public, entrenching a way of life that required constant spending. Through the mass media, Americans were told that buying things was not just personally fulfilling, but economically necessary. A civic obligation, really. They were told that purchasing and accumulating stuff was patriotic, normal, and emotionally satisfying. Consumerism, that great American religion, was preached from every billboard and TV screen, redefining happiness as a garage full of gadgets. Having established consumerism, the next step was to make it financially sustainable, which is to say, unsustainable. As real wages began their long stagnation in the 1970s, the elites offered a brilliant solution: debt-fueled consumption. Why pay workers enough to buy things when you could simply lend them the money to buy things? To finance this new lifestyle, debt was made readily available and socially acceptable. Consumer debt went from being a sign of irresponsibility to being a patriotic duty. The elites turned the pursuit of being into the pursuit of having, and the flock bought it hook, line, and sinker. Beginning in the 1950s and exploding in the 1980s, the availability of unsecured revolving credit allowed Americans to maintain the illusion of prosperity while their real wages deteriorated. The development and proliferation of the modern credit card industry and the promotion of consumer credit in the latter half of the 20th century was no accident. It was the essential mechanism for enabling a population with decaying real wages to continue participating in the consumerist economy. By the 2000s, debt had become the lifeblood of the American household, used to pay for vacations, college, cars, and even groceries. Debt became the new wage increase. Want a computer? Charge it. House? Mortgage it. Healthcare? Refinance? And so the American middle class, flush with TV dinners and color televisions, unknowingly exchanged security for shackles. So what happens when wages stagnate? You can't fund a dream on warm wishes. To enable this consumption, a new financial infrastructure was created. Credit cards. Enter Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. Plastic miracles that allowed the working class to keep up appearances while sinking into invisible servitude. As real wages began to stagnate in the 70s, they didn't just let the middle class sink, they handed out life preservers made of credit cards. The credit card industry, barely a blip before 1970, became the golden calf of the new economy. Credit cards exploded across the landscape like financial kudzu. It became a crucial tool for maintaining the illusion of prosperity. By 2008, the average household was drowning in $8,000 of credit card debt, and total consumer debt reached unprecedented levels, chasing the mirage of prosperity as real wages moldered. The irony? The worker, once a warrior for fair wages, now a serf to Visa, toiling to pay interest to the very elites who'd rigged the game. Debt wasn't just a trap, it was a leash, ensuring compliance. Strike? Organize? Not when you've got a mortgage and a maxed-out MasterCard. The beauty of this system was its self-reinforcing nature. Debt served the dual purpose of maintaining consumption levels while making compliant employees less likely to strike or demand better conditions. Workers more dependent on their employers and less likely to challenge the system. They were trapped in a golden hamster wheel, running faster and faster to stay in the same place, generating enormous profits for their creditors while slowly drowning in their own obligations. Debt became an ultimate form of control. Households deeply in debt are less likely to organize and more likely to accept decreasing wages. In effect, consumer credit replaced collective bargaining as the way Americans managed declining income. To wit, living on credit and the cultural elevation of consumption as a measure of success served to maintain the appearance of middle-class prosperity even as its foundations eroded. Easy credit created a mirage of good fortune, allowing individuals to achieve the American dream by going into debt, thus trapping them in a cycle of work and repayment that benefited the financial institutions, the very core of the elite class. The transformation of consumption from a means of meeting human needs to an end in itself was a crucial element of the elite strategy. As historian Lendol Calder documents in his book, Financing the American Dream, A Cultural History of Consumer Credit, the promotion of consumer credit allowed workers to maintain their standard of living even as their real wages degenerated. But this apparent solution created new forms of economic bondage. Workers burdened with debt became more compliant employees, less likely to risk job loss through strikes or demands for better working conditions. The credit card didn't just buy stuff, it bought silence. Chains you swipe with. The promotion of homeownership through subprime lending served a similar function. Even as real wages decomposed, workers could appear to be building wealth through rising home values. But this wealth was largely illusory, based on debt and speculation rather than genuine productive capacity. The housing bubble that culminated in 2008 was not an accident, but the predictable result of policies designed to substitute debt for wages. This cultural shift was further accelerated by selling outrageous dreams of instant, effortless wealth. The old ethos of hard work, financial discipline, and patient savings was supplanted by the lure of speculative windfalls. The dot-com bubble, the housing bubble, and the modern frenzy around cryptocurrencies and 10-bagger stock profits are all manifestations of this trend. These schemes serve a dual purpose. They distract from the reality of moribund wages and create a casino-like economy where the house, the financial elite, always wins, while the average person is left with the losses. Furthermore, the promotion of instant wealth narratives through lottery advertising, get-rich-quick schemes, and through stock market speculation and Bitcoin fantasies serve to redirect worker aspirations away from collective action and toward individual gambling. Instead of organizing for better wages and working conditions, workers were encouraged to believe that their problems could be solved through lucky breaks, a jackpot, or market speculation. Sadists with spreadsheets. Let's not forget the Federal Reserve, Fed, that smoke-filled sanctum of unelected wizards who preach price stability and practice wage suppression. The elite's velvet-gloved fist in the destruction of the middle class. The true masterpiece of elite strategy was the utilization of the Federal Reserve as their prime instrument of class warfare. A cornerstone of the economic assault on the middle class was the manipulation of monetary policy by the Fed. The Fed's ostensible obsession with price stability, controlling inflation, and maximum employment turned out to be, in practice, an obsession with wage suppression and protecting the interests of capital. Perhaps the most direct weapon in the elite arsenal is the Fed's monetary policy. The Fed's obsession with inflation is, in practice, an obsession with wage growth. The Fed uses interest rate hikes to intentionally increase unemployment, thereby reducing workers' bargaining power and keeping wage growth in check. Every time workers gained enough bargaining power to demand higher wages, the Fed would helpfully create a recession to remind them of their place. Tasked with taming inflation and boosting jobs, the Fed instead played sadomonetarist, as economist Michael Perlman dubbed it, wielding interest rates like a cattle prod to keep workers in line. In a revealing piece by Perlman, published in the Monthly Review, the concept of sadomonetarism was based on the sophisticated economic theory that a certain number of Americans must remain unemployed at all times to prevent the rest from getting uppity about their compensation. In other words, every time labor got overweening, demanding raises in a tight job market, the Fed jacked up rates, spiking unemployment to keep wages limp. As Perlman articulates and documents in his analysis of Federal Reserve minutes, the central bank consistently used its power to suppress wages through the deliberate creation of unemployment. This policy of sadomonetarism was explicitly designed to maintain what Federal Reserve officials called a traumatized workforce, workers so insecure about their jobs that they wouldn't dare ask for raises. Anytime the labor market becomes tight enough to give workers bargaining power to demand higher wages, the Fed intervenes by raising interest rates, a direct mechanism to prevent labor from claiming a larger share of economic output. This Federal Reserve strategy is based on the recognition that full employment gives workers bargaining power. When unemployment is low, workers can demand higher wages, better working conditions, and greater job security. To prevent this, the Federal Reserve consistently intervened to maintain unemployment at levels high enough to keep workers compliant. The Fed's minutes, as dissected by economist Edwin Dickens, reveal a deliberate dance. Fed officials repeatedly voted to tighten monetary policy specifically to coincide with major union contract negotiations, thus tightening policy to kneecap union negotiations, ensuring the workers' slice of the pie stayed razor thin. Then we have the Fed's obsession with the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment, NIRU. This is less science than sorcery, a pretext to justify joblessness as a public good. NIRU was designed to maintain a level of unemployment sufficient to keep workers insecure and wages low. It maintains that there is a natural level of unemployment below which inflation would accelerate. But as economist James Galbraith and others have shown, the NIRU is an ideological construct designed to justify policies that benefited capital at the expense of labor. Full employment is a sin, but a bloated stock market is divine. Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan's, more oracle than economist, shtick explicitly acknowledged the role of promoting worker insecurity while seemingly concerned for maintaining price stability. In congressional testimony, he spoke of and practically praised the traumatized worker who, despite low unemployment, was too frightened to demand wage increases. This insecurity, Greenspan argued, was the result of globalization and technological change. He lied. It was his own policies that played a crucial role in maintaining this insecurity by consistently intervening to prevent full employment. The goal was fear, workers too scared to ask for more. The Fed had perfected the art of financial sadomonetarism, choke inflation by strangling workers.